Time to elevate. You're running on empty with Matt and Tony.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Running on Empty. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tony.
And we are running on empty. And we have got a repeat guest coming back today. It is our What the Heck episode. So,
yes,
Tony.
Matt, it is our regular feature. What the heck is going on with the great Jay Heck, the executive director of Common Cause in Wisconsin? Of course, our listeners are familiar with Jay. Jay, thank you so much for coming back. There's so much ridiculous kind of nonsense going on in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, have you ever seen it like this? This level of let's start with one issue, Jay. The Wisconsin Supreme Court just literally outlawed drop boxes for votes by a 4-3 vote. Maybe you can start with that issue. What is that all about?
Well, first of all, Matt and Tony, great to be back with you again. And just by way of introduction, I think I first started talking with you, Tony. It's got to be in the 90s, late 90s, when you and Jim Mather had a cable TV show in Oshkosh.
Oh, yeah.
And I would come up and we would tape it and then send it out on VHS tapes. So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But what is, and you asked me, have I ever seen anything as crazy? And I will say this, about 11 years ago, when the Republicans were, and Scott Walker had just taken over the Wisconsin legislature, they, in a space of about 2 months, ran through the most undemocratic, and that's with a small d, anti-voter agenda in the history of the United States.
That's right.
When they pushed through the most restrictive voter ID law in the country, the most partisan Republican gerrymander in the country, when they eliminated all public financing of state elections, which we had for the legislature, governor, and for the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah.
And then they also, in short order, eliminated the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Board and basically destroyed disclosure in the state. So you ask me, have I ever seen it as crazy as it is now? Well,
I guess the answer is yes.
It's been sustained crazy, really, since then. And of course, with the election or the whatever you call it of Donald Trump in 2016, and then in the federal level, it's been sort of nonstop. But to get to your more immediate point, in 2020 there was a severe pandemic, not just in Wisconsin, but across the country. And so the decision was made by Republicans and Democrats alike in the Wisconsin legislature that there had to be safer ways to vote. And while people don't normally vote by absentee ballot in Wisconsin, usually the percentage was less than 5%, 2020 and the pandemic changed everything. And so 2020, we saw upwards of 60% of Wisconsinites voting by absentee ballot, which made a lot of sense.
Sure.
Because there weren't a lot of poll workers, there weren't sufficient people to even work at polling places, and people were frankly frightened of catching COVID if they went to a polling place. So that made a lot of sense. And then one of the things Republicans on the Wisconsin Elections Commission, which was formed, by the way, with only Republican votes in 2015. It was a creation of Scott Walker and the Republicans. The Wisconsin Elections Commission voted unanimously to allow safe, secure drop boxes to be utilized to deposit your filled out, completed, and witnessed absentee ballot. And for 2020, there were 500 of them spread across Wisconsin.
All over the state.
All of them secure. By the way, they're more secure than U.S. postal boxes.
Sure.
Because you can't break into them, you can't empty them, and you can't remove them from their moorings like you can if you have a SUV with a U.S. mailbox. But the point was that they were a safe way to deposit your absentee ballot. But because Donald Trump claims that more Democrats utilized this form of voting and that therefore that somehow cheated him, even though he lost by 8 million votes across the United States, somehow was cheated out of the presidency in 2020. He began the narrative that voting by absentee ballot, A, was fraudulent, and B, particularly if you used a secure drop box. By the way, every study, every investigation has shown not a single drop box was broken into in the state of Wisconsin during the 2020 election or since then. There has been no fraudulent votes deposited in those drop boxes. This is a cynical calculation by the Republicans, and because they fear Donald Trump's wrath, that simply because possibly more Democrats had the good sense to vote by absentee ballot and utilize these drop boxes, that if we got rid of them, that's going to help Republicans win more elections in Wisconsin. And that's really all it is.
So the Justice Rebecca Bradley ended up comparing the use of drop boxes to elections in Saddam Hussein's Iraq.
Oh my God.
What? How does someone like that even get out of law school? Like how did you even understand? Like where did she come up with that? How is that even remotely similar?
She is trying to somehow equate Joe Biden or Democrats as somehow being akin to Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi or some other evil and of course Arab person.
Yes,
that would fit in with what Rebecca Bradley likes to do is to demonize anybody that isn't white Christian conservative. So. That's what it is. It's pure nonsense and it's pure hyperbole. And by the way, the court had no legal basis to do that. This was simply a decision on their part to go along with the Republican status quo that elected them. We have 4 Supreme Court justices who were elected by the Republican Party and by Wisconsin Club for Growth and Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. And so when those organizations say, here's what we need you to do, that's what they do.
Right. One of them, Brian Hagedorn, has on occasion done the right thing, right? He's disappointed the Republican donors over the years. And on this one, he kind of caved in. I mean, he's up for re-election. Is it next year, Jay?
No, he's not up for a re-election until I think 2017 or 21 or 20, whatever year we are. It's 2027.
Oh, so he's got quite a bit of time left.
He was elected in 17, or he was elected actually in 19, actually.
Oh, really?
So I'm sorry, 17. He was elected.
17, so, and they're 10-year terms.
So the next election, which is really possibly the most critical Supreme Court election, not just in Wisconsin's history, but maybe in the nation, is in 2023 to replace retiring right-wing conservative Patience Rogensack, who's retiring. And so ideological control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court will be up in April of 2023. Wow. And the winner of that critical decision will be able to sway the court either in the direction of Trump and turning the election mechanism for Trump, regardless of how Wisconsin votes in 2024, or keep it sane and keep it fair. Particularly if the Governor Evers somehow loses this November.
Wow,
so that's going to be very critical.
Wow.
What I can't understand is the Wisconsin just voted to say, all right, well we want to decertify these election results based on what? I mean, like what evidence, what proof do they have that Joe Biden is not the president? I mean, even if they don't like him, that's fine. But what evidence do they have, and why would they? I mean, like, where's the accountability on this?
So here's what's remarkable. Right after the Wisconsin Supreme Court issued that decision on July 8th about ending drop boxes, and by the way, they also tried to make it more difficult for disabled people and elderly people to simply to be able to return their absentee ballot. What they ruled is that they cannot give it to anybody, that they have to return it themselves. And there was even some possibility that a disabled person who could not walk had to deposit it in the U.S. mailbox themselves for that ballot to count. Now, that's been walked back by the Wisconsin Elections Commission. And so if you are disabled, you can have somebody take your absentee ballot and put it in the U.S. mailbox. But you had better not have it delivered to your election clerk by anybody other than yourself. So those two decisions are sort of the scenario that happened July 8th. Former President Donald Trump called the Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly the next day and said, Robin Vos, and this is your point, Matt, that because all those people voted by absentee ballot through drop boxes, anybody that voted that way, those votes shouldn't count. And therefore, the election results in Wisconsin need to be decertified.
Jesus.
Now, what Vos says he told Trump, although I have my doubts, was that no, Mr. President, legally in Wisconsin, we cannot do that. The legislature does not have the power to decertify the results of an election that's already been certified, and in this case, in December of 2020.
Yeah.
So
and by the way, Jay, simply for stating that simple fact, Robin Vos is facing a primary in his district, correct?
Oh yeah, there's someone even to the right of Robin Vos.
Right, which is unbelievable. I never thought I'd see the day when there's someone to the right of Robin Vos.
Yeah,
but that's amazing. But meanwhile, Jay, one of the real scandals in this state that I don't hear Mr. or Representative Vos or any of the Republicans talking about are the fake electors. Correct? Didn't we have fake electors in Wisconsin that supposedly Ron Johnson was a senator was supposed to hand the names of the fake electors to Mike Pence?
Yeah, that was this just broke about a month ago.
Yeah,
the top aide, the chief of staff, by the way, for U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, contacted the chief of staff for Vice President Mike Pence roughly an hour before the beginning of the count of the electoral votes on January 6th, and said, my boss, Ron Johnson, wants to hand your boss, Mike Pence, the slate of Trump electors, to which the chief of staff for Pence told Ron Johnson's chief of staff, don't hand us those. Do not do that, because he realized that was completely illegal for that to even occur or that transaction to occur. Now, here's the thing I love about this. Johnson immediately said, oh gosh, that's just staff talking to staff.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. I had nothing to do with it. There's nothing there. Well, I can tell you as someone who was the chief staffer for a member of the United States House of Representatives, that kind of decision is not made on a staff-to-staff basis.
A staffer's not making that decision.
Something
no
of
way.
that magnitude. Ron Johnson totally knew completely about it.
So why isn't his ass in jail? Seriously.
Well, because he's blaming it on a staff member. Interestingly enough, that the chief of staff is still, as far as I know, still has a job and is still in place.
Of course.
So if it's such a serious issue on the part of the staff, apparently there were no consequences for doing it.
But the news broke, I think it was yesterday or today, Jay, that in Georgia, they're actually moving to prosecute the fake electors in that state. Could the Attorney General in Wisconsin, Josh Kaul, does he have the power to move for prosecution against the fake electors in Wisconsin?
That's a good question. I think part of it is state law in Georgia that I think it defines, how what an elector has to be. And I don't know if the law is identical in Wisconsin. My guess is that it's certainly improper, if not illegal, for there to be a fake slate of electors. Mm-hmm. Certainly, it would have been illegal if people tried to vote those electors rather than the Biden electors that were duly elected. But what's interesting is that one of the fake electors also sits on the Wisconsin Elections Commission, a guy by the name of Robert Spindell, who couldn't even get another vote by any other Republican to make him the new chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, because he is so steeped in this conspiracy theory stuff and is so up to his nose in Trumpism that even people in his own party don't want to have anything to do with him.
Oh my
But
goodness.
those are the kinds of people that are trying to take over elections. So Robin Vos and Devin LeMahieu, who's the Senate Majority Leader, both very conservative Republicans, they both have said that and we should, I guess, be grateful to them for stating the obvious truth that Joe Biden won the election in Wisconsin. So somehow, I guess that makes us, we should say, well, gosh, thank you so much for telling the truth. But here's what they're trying to do today. It's interesting. So this is Wednesday, July 20th. 2 days ago, they directed their lackeys on the Wisconsin Joint Committee for the Review of Administrative Rules to write a rule that stipulates that election clerks cannot do what is called curing an absentee ballot, which is simply if there's an address of a witness on the back of an absentee ballot, which is required by law, under current practice, an election clerk could correct the address of that witness, not of the voter, but of the witness. So say, for instance, you live on Maple Road in Oshkosh, Tony, and you didn't put your number, which is 123 Maple Road. Well, a city clerk could just write 123 in front of Maple Road, and then that would complete your absentee ballot witness, and your vote would count. Vos and LeMahieu are so terrified of Trump that they're now stipulating that there be rules written in the legislature that if the address of the witness isn't completely as it needs to be, that absentee ballot gets totally thrown out.
Jesus,
and not counted. And again, this is a cynical calculation. The calculation, hey, there's a lot of Republicans in Oshkosh and everywhere else who vote by absentee ballot and whose votes won't count. But what they've cynically calculated is, again, because they figure more Democrats vote by absentee ballot, it's going to hurt more Democrats, and that will help them win elections.
Well, and of course, they only want to monitor this in the counties that have a majority Democratic turnout.
Sure. Dane and Milwaukee County primarily.
Yeah, because if there was a Republican that won, we don't need to check that out. No, that wasn't fraudulent at all. No, God.
Well, that's right. Inconsistencies never been part of it. But, I mean, this is why we call the death of democracy by a thousand cuts, because, each of these little things taken in and of itself, it might appear to the average person that seems reasonable, that, there needs to be drop boxes, but maybe not so many of them, or, these other restrictions that they're constantly trying to impose. But taken together, they will disenfranchise literally tens of thousands of Wisconsinites. And we've already dropped. We used to be second in the nation in voter turnout. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, Tony, when you were running for the legislature, Wisconsin was regularly number 2 in the country, only to Minnesota in voter turnout. We're now somewhere near 14. I mean, we're dropping because Republicans are trying to make it much more difficult for vast amounts of people to be able to just simply cast a ballot.
And on top of all this, we still have the so-called investigation of the 2020 election going on with former Justice Michael Gableman, who I think you've called appropriately the worst Supreme Court justice in the history of the state. And isn't he now, Jay, being fined $2,000 a day for not releasing open records?
Yeah, a Dane County court has fined him for not complying with the open records law and releasing records, which he says he deleted. And then he said, well, he didn't really know what he was doing because he works at a public computer at a public library in Brookfield, because he doesn't know anything about computers.
Right.
But
he knows enough to delete stuff. Sure.
Exactly. But here's the thing about Michael Gableman. This is costing you, the taxpayers of Wisconsin, $1 million of your money so far. There has not been any finding of fraud. There has been no finding of any votes that were cast incorrectly. There's been absolutely no investigation that's turned up anything irregular about the 2020 election. And yet what keeps him fueled is this contingent of anti-voting Trump supporters and Donald Trump himself. Gableman apparently talks to Trump and has had Trump call Robin Voss and Devin Lemieux on behalf of Gableman. So Gableman, whenever he suspects that the gravy train might be over and he's not going to get any more taxpayer money to do this sham investigation, he calls the Trump people and they go after Voss and Lemieux. So
and some of the records that have been released from Gableman, Jay, are so bizarre and offensive. I mean, he's trying to figure out who in the Milwaukee County Elections Commission is probably a Democrat. I'm sure you heard about this. He concludes that because this one gal in the office had a nose ring and played video games, she must be a Democrat.
Oh my God.
This actually was in his communications, right?
Well, it's worse than that. I mean,
say it ain't so.
Republicans don't have nose rings ever. They don't play video games.
He is such a repulsive human being that he even decided. Megan Wolf, who is the administrator of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, Gableman, who has a very sordid personal history himself with regard to his private personal conduct, which is one of the reasons, by the way, he did not run for re-election state Supreme Court in 2018. He castigated Megan Wolf for wearing a certain type of sweater and earrings. And he said,
black dress and pearls.
Pardon me?
Black dress and pearls.
Exactly. It was an incredibly sexist, disgusting, demeaning comment. And this is what he does. He attacks people personally if he thinks somehow that will diminish them, in front of the people he's trying to impress. So nobody's impressed with Gableman.
No. But here's what I don't understand, Jay. We're talking about all this absurdity going on, and 99.9% of it coming from the Wisconsin Republican Party. And yet they don't pay any political price for this at all. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong I'm sure you have the data. If my facts are wrong, let us know. We have 99 assembly districts. I believe that in 16 of them, there's no Democrat running at all. And I believe in the state Senate, we have, what are there, Jay, 23 Senate seats?
33.
I'm sorry, 33. I believe 5 of them this year, there's no Democrat running. So how is it possible that the Republicans can pull off all of this craziness we're talking about? And not only do they not seem to pay any political price, they seem to actually gain power.
Yeah, well, we'll go back to 2011 briefly, when Scott Walker and the Republican-controlled legislature pushed through the most partisan gerrymandering of state legislative and congressional districts of any state in the country. And then 2021, even though we had a governor who was of the different political party, Governor Evers was a Democrat, and who vetoed the very gerrymandered maps that the Republican legislature passed late last year, they have a Supreme Court that was purchased by the Republican Party of Wisconsin. And so the Wisconsin Supreme Court upheld the gerrymandered maps that are even more partisan and in favor of Republicans in 2021 than they were in 2011. So that's like going even further crazy than they were before. So that's the reason why, Tony. That's the reason why. I mean, Democrats in some of these districts, I mean, I don't blame them for not making an effort to put up a Democratic candidate in some of them.
It's that hopeless.
It's just so hopeless that they do have to some extent, sort of figure out where they can put some resources and possibly have a chance. What we're looking at right now is the very strong possibility that we'll have a veto-proof majority in the Senate. You need 22, Republicans need 22 seats of the 33. They currently have 21.
Oh my goodness.
The northern Wisconsin seat, the Janet Bewley seat, is likely, I would say, to go Republican. She almost lost last time. She's not running again. And there's a couple others that are very, very tough. The Assembly, it's there. That's not likely to get a veto-proof majority. But for one reason and one reason only, that's because the Republicans have gerrymandered the assembly so badly that there's no more opportunity for them to pick up any further seats in the
Jeez.
assembly. I mean, they're going to go after the seat that Lori Palmieri is running.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yes.
so they will put
Full
a lot of
disclosure, I am
into
married to
that.
Lori Palmieri and she's running for assembly.
So that is that is arguably one of the 4 or 5 of 99 assembly seats in Wisconsin that is even remotely competitive.
Wow.
Wow.
So none of the rest really are battlegrounds at all. And that's
Very
the problem.
scary.
Democrats have been packed into so few districts that virtually there's not many Democrats that can be defeated anymore, except for in these competitive districts like the one
Right.
in Oshkosh that Lori Palmieri is running in.
Right. Right.
You had
Exactly.
said something.
So,
You had said something earlier about people, like being afraid of Trump. What are they afraid of? Like, what could he possibly do? I mean, hopefully within a few months he's in an orange jumpsuit, but what could he possibly do? Why are they scared of him?
Well, the fear is what happened in Tuesday of this week in the state of Maryland, where they had a moderate Republican governor, a guy named Lawrence Hogan.
Mhm.
And the person, in the Republican primary, there were 2 people trying to succeed him to get the Republican nomination. One, a protege of his, a very attractive kind of moderate Republican, and then a bat crazy Trump supporter. And it was the bat crazy Trump supporter that won. He won the nomination for the Republican nomination for governor of Maryland. Now, experts say that he probably doesn't have a chance to win now in the general election, and
Sure.
that the Democrats will get that seat. But that's the fear on the part of people like LeMahieu and Voss and others, is that the crazy people. There's a guy named Timothy Rantham,
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
as crazy as Tim Michaels is, and Tim Michaels is very, very far right, and Rebecca Kleefisch also. Rampton is even to the right of them.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
those are the types of people that Voss and LeMahieu are afraid of, because if those people are nominated in Wisconsin, then they don't think the Republicans would be able to hold on to power for, certainly statewide office.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I would argue that Tim Michaels and Rebecca Kleefisch have so ingratiated themselves to Trump. Kleefisch with no reward. Michaels got the Trump endorsement. She
Yeah.
did not, and yet she was basically kissing Trump's toes, trying to get his endorsement. But they are running on the same conspiracy theories
Oh, yeah.
that these other people are, and so hopefully there'll be enough people in Wisconsin at the statewide level, and that's where there's hope, because gerrymandering doesn't affect statewide elections. You've got to win all the votes statewide to be elected governor. So gerrymandering isn't a factor in the statewide elections for attorney general or for governor.
But that's the thing, Jay. I mean, all these attacks on voting rights. I mean, this is where we learn how much effect they've had, right?
Well, absolutely.
Because I could see a scenario where our incumbent governor, Tony Evers, Democrat, he could lose, and he could lose by a small percentage.
Yeah.
And who knows if it's because of these restrictions on voting.
Well, exactly right. And that's exactly what the Republican game plan is. They know that to win statewide, they have to suppress the vote.
Right.
They have to make it more difficult for people to be able to vote.
And of course, if they win, the election is on the up and up. If they lose, the election was corrupt.
Yeah.
It's heads I win, tails you lose.
That will be their narrative.
Yes.
Now that'll be disputed very strongly by organizations like mine, and by people that have some common sense. I would like to think, and I don't know if he would, but I would like to think that former Republican Governor Tommy Thompson, even though he's backing Tim Michaels for governor, if Michaels loses to Evers, you would like to think that people like Thompson and others will stand up, and LeMahieu and Voss, and say, all right, enough. Evers won. Let's move on. Well, that remains to be seen. I don't know. I think as long as Donald Trump has the Republican Party in his clause, that's going to be a very tough trick for Republicans.
Well, I hate to agree with Liz Cheney on anything, but when Liz Cheney came out a few weeks ago and she said, and I think I almost have a direct quote here, she said, to my Republican colleagues, someday Donald Trump will be gone and all that will remain is your dishonor.
Yeah.
The idea that Tommy Thompson, who's been able to frame himself as somewhat of a moderate, rational Republican, is now backing Tim Michels. And didn't Thompson himself go down to Mar-a-Lago looking for Trump's? I mean, the reason why Tommy didn't run for governor again is that apparently Trump wouldn't endorse him. Is that correct?
I think it's also, there are a lot of people, his family basically said, Tommy, you're too old. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You're 82.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question. I'm just going to jump to January 6th here, but the result of it. So if Trump ends up getting convicted and having some accountability for his role in this, do you think the Republicans will then distance themselves from him? Because if they support him all the way and he's like guilty as charged, then they're basically agreeing with like being a traitor and treason and all that stuff. So when do you think the rats are going to actually start to like leave the ship?
I think the rats would jump off the ship very quickly if Donald Trump were tried and convicted. And I mean, as long as the only reason he has any influence is because he's got power right now. And but that power would be severely diminished if he were convicted in a court of law and taken off in an orange jumpsuit. Yeah, I think I think that might be enough to get at least 80% of the rats to jump off the ship.
That would be nice. That would be very, very nice.
I agree.
It would still defend.
Jay, one thing, you and your organization have studied the impact of money in politics for a long time. And in Wisconsin this year, we have a very competitive governor's race and we've got a very competitive U.S. Senate race. I mean, ballpark, how much money do you expect to be spent? Are we going to see record amount of spending in these races this year?
Yeah, we are. And the reason is that, the Democrats are better at raising money than they've been for quite some time. So that helps them. The Republicans never have any problem raising money.
No.
But the real problem in Wisconsin at the gubernatorial level is that we no longer have any limits on the amount of money that can be contributed by multimillionaires to either the political party or really essentially to candidates in the form of what are called issue ad groups. So, this person, Diana Hendricks in Beloit, who runs ABC Construction, she's worth about $5 billion. She can contribute literally hundreds of millions of dollars.
And will.
To the Republican Party and will. And the Uline family, although they live in the North Shore of Chicago, they have a company in Kenosha County. They contributed millions and millions of dollars first to Kevin Nicholson, and I'm sure will contribute to Michels and Republicans. So you have all this outside money that's flowing in, and then conversely, with the destruction of the of all federal campaign constraints through the Citizens United decision in 2010. Ron Johnson is going to have just gobs and gobs.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, he's already raised more money in the first quarter than all of the Democratic candidates who are running for the U.S. Senate combined.
Amazing.
So he's going to have a lot. The only person I would say that could probably, at least on the playing field of money, that could compete with him to any degree would be Alex Lasry of Milwaukee, because his father is a hedge fund billionaire.
Yes.
So if he wants to open his checkbook and do what Herb Kohl used to do, and just shove millions of dollars into the campaign, then I suppose he could. But the money, it's going to be record spending. The U.S. Senate race could be, Ohio will probably be, and Pennsylvania will probably be more expensive than Wisconsin, but it'd be third. But the gubernatorial, easily the most expensive in the country. And let me repeat this again. The state Supreme Court election in April of 2023 will be the most expensive state Supreme Court election in the history of the United States.
Wow.
In history, because it's in an off year. It's the year before the presidential election. And whoever controls the Wisconsin Supreme Court will control Wisconsin for
Yeah.
2024 for the
Wow.
presidential election. So you know that Trump and the Democratic National Committee and everybody else will be pouring hundreds of millions of
Wow.
dollars into that.
It'll be the most expensive and the most consequential.
Yep,
Wow.
absolutely.
Jay, we're
But
just
we'll-
about
we'll
out
all
of
be
time.
part of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Jay, we're just about out of time. Thank you once again for doing this. We love our what the heck is going on with Jay Heck feature.
It's always an eye opener.
Always an eye opener, very informative. Depressing, but also hopeful because of all the people that I talk to, Jay, who have interest in small d democracy, even though you understand the sheer extent of what we're facing, you somehow remain optimistic through all this, right? You still think the people at the grassroots level can ultimately change these things.
They can. I am, and because I know a couple of things, and let me just point to the poster in back of me. In 1972, that guy George McGovern lost every state in the country except for Massachusetts to one Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
And less than 2 years later, Richard Nixon resigned in disgrace.
Yep.
Because of corruption, because of the Watergate scandal. Politics is cyclical, and politics and great victories like that bring about arrogance.
Yep.
So we're only a couple $100 million away from the next Watergate, and we're only corruption and the flip in politics can happen pretty suddenly. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy about that. And the other thing, let me just close on this, is that I think younger people today, as a result of the Roe v. Wade decision, as a result of a lot of climate, global warming, I think they are activated in a way that I haven't seen people since you and I were kids, and Matt, in the aftermath of the Vietnam War.
I agree.
People are motivated to get active, and I do think ultimately that's going to change things. But we have to vote. I mean, you have to get out, and you have to do the hard, difficult things that require you to participate in elections. You can't just say, I'm too busy and I've got to do a TikTok video.
Yeah.
Well,
unless it's a TikTok video urging people to vote.
There you go.
There you go. Well, the millennials have the biggest majority of voters right now. So if they would actually just get off their butts and go vote, I think we could make a difference.
Huge difference. Once again, Jay, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Jay. Hey, Tony, another great interview with Jay. I tell you, every time that we talk with him, I'm learning more and more. I mean, this is like me actually going back to school and being a student again. So I'm absorbing all this stuff, and not being in Wisconsin. I'm not always in touch with some of the day-to-day stuff. I mean, you sent me a bunch of things going on, and we only touched the surface of what's going on. There's so much more. So we got to definitely have him back again,
Well, Jay's been doing this for 30 years now, and I've never met anyone that's got as much of a grasp of the details of the corruption.
Right.
And I admire the fact that he's able to remain optimistic through it. And I do agree with him. I thought it was great what he said about how, George McGovern in 1972 got blown out, and then 2 years later, Richard Nixon is resigning.
Mm-hmm.
So things can change really almost literally overnight when you least expect it.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping things change within the next few months here with the stuff that's going on with January 6th, because regardless of what people want to, how they want to spin it, or, whatever they're saying, it looks like even Fox News has kind of turned on, what's going on there. But once the end result of that comes out, all I want to see is accountability, man.
Yeah.
I just want to see accountability. If there's no accountability, I don't know. What do you do next then? I mean, the biggest thing is they cannot allow Trump to run again. That's the biggest thing. And I think once that happens, or he's, because he's got New York, he's got Georgia. So something is bound to stick eventually. I mean, he doesn't have the power he used to have. Doesn't have the support as he used to have. And I think that once that conviction comes on, and I'm really trying to manifest that, man, I'm telling you, it's with all the testimony and stuff that they have, even though there's a couple deleted Secret Service texts that we're not going to see. Maybe they'll find them, maybe not. But I'm just hoping that common sense prevails, and we can kind of go back to somewhat normal in politics, because it is so far from it. And thankful for folks like Jay out there who expose what's, really going on. Like you said, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. These little tiny things here and there might not seem like a big deal, but it's part of a way bigger picture. Way bigger picture.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess, Matt, the best we can do up until these changes take place is, as always, try and stay elevated.
Let's stay elevated, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care.
You're running on empty with Matt and Tony.